Hi, this is Rich Crawford, and you're listening to White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federation family. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am your first vice president. Thank you for joining me for this episode, number 154 of White Canes Connect. Today we are speaking to Rich Crawford, a very long-time member of the National Federation of the Blind, first in Iowa and now in South Dakota. He has the unenviable position of being the treasurer of the South Dakota affiliate, and my condolences there because I can't imagine being a treasurer on the affiliate level. And we'll talk about that in the interview as far as being treasurer and other positions Rich has held both in Iowa and in South Dakota. We're having Rich on today because Rich has so many positive things to get you moving and to get you the idea that, hey, you can do things, might be a little bit differently. I mean, he hitchhiked his way to work for decades, primarily because iPhones and Uber and Lyft didn't exist back when he had to get to work. So listen for that. Listen to how he got kicked out of a blind school, and it wasn't because he was blind. So listen for that and stay till the end, because at the end, Rich will give his contact information so you can reach out to him. He is a great resource, and I encourage you to do that. He has got a lifetime worth of knowledge of doing various things. First, learning as a kid the value of working and learning to do things even after he lost his sight. So this is someone that can be very helpful to you. So make sure if you've got questions for Rich, stick around to the end to get his contact info and reach out to him. Before we get to the interview, first, let's hear from Jonathan Mosen about the National Federation of the Blind's Give 25 program.
Make a difference with the National Federation of the Blind's Keep NFB Advancing Give $25 campaign. Each year, thousands of Federation members and friends contribute to support blind people, but we still need your help to fund our programs in 2026 and beyond. When you give $25 between May 15th and July 7th, you're entered into the Keep NFB Advancing drawing. Each $25 increment is a chance to win. Your support helps us continue to build a network that advances the lives of all blind people across America. You could win prizes like round-trip transportation for two to the 2027 NFB National Convention, hotel accommodations, registration, banquet tickets, or $2,000 cash. What a chance to win a Braille Note Evolve from Humanware? Become a Federation Connector. Ask friends and family to contribute before National Convention and indicate that you prompted their giving. The Give $25 drive supports the Kenneth Jernigan Fund, Sun Fund, Ten Brook Memorial Fund, and the White Cane Fund. You can choose a fund when you donate. To enter, visit nfb.org/give25donate. That's nfb.org/give25donate. Call 410-659-9314, extension 2430, or send a check to National Federation of the Blind and mention #Give25 and the fund in the memo. The winner will be announced July 8th, 2026. Thank you for your generosity.
Rich is someone who is still very active, both within the National Federation of the Blind and other cool things like 3-day fishing trips, hunting, and whatnot. Now, let's listen to my conversation with Rich Crawford. Rich, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, David, for having me. I'm always open to want to share what I think is kind of a fun story.
It's so nice to hear from folks who have grown up through their adult life in the NFB and to hear their perspective of how things were and how things are, where we were back all those years ago and how things are today. Let's start off with your blindness journey. What happened? Were you born blind? Did you lose your sight along the way? What happened with your eyesight?
Early on in my childhood, my parents started noticing that I would trip over trikes and run into trees and couldn't see at night. At age 10, I became legally blind with retinitis pigmentosa. and went from the public school system after my fourth grade year to the School for the Blind for 5 years.
How did your folks take it, and how did that affect you the way they reacted?
Well, David, I was lucky, and I encourage blind people to read books about successful blind people. And one common theme on all the books I keep reading about successful blind people is we were fortunate to have wonderful parents. And I was one of those fortunate young kids. My mother was a mother at 15. My father was 16. So they got an early jump on life, and they didn't have all the education knowledge that sometimes make people lose what's common sense they may have had. So my parents didn't know I wasn't supposed to do things just because I couldn't see. And what a blessing that was.
That's funny that you mentioned the education. My dad went through 8th grade and still was very successful in business. He wasn't blind, but he had a similar upbringing where he was always working. From the time he was 10 or 11, he started working. And both my folks, I would say to them, "Oh, I want to do this, but you can't see, but it's okay. You want to try it? Go ahead." And sometimes some other sighted folks were, "Do you think he should be doing that? Let's put him in the outfield instead of at third base," and, and stuff like
Or let
that.
him be second base.
Right. Or
Well,
that.
I was fortunate. My dad had Crawford Tree Service all the years I was growing up, and I started at age 9 working for him, raking yards on the weekends, and he taught me how to run chainsaws and split wood and change oil in the trucks and the spark plugs and rotate the tires and electrical. My dad just told me, let's find out what you can't do by telling me, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And we figured out the way. He didn't know the way. He helped me figure out the way.
And I think that's really important that you figure things out. You may not, any of us may not be able to do specific tasks as a sighted person, but there's sometimes, or most times, is a way that we can do things. You got to figure that out and just go with it.
Absolutely right.
So when you went to the School for the Blind, how did you like it? Did you like being there? Did you like being around the other blind folks? How was that?
Well, one of the things I learned early on, because at the time I went, I was considered a high partial. So I learned the hierarchy of sight, which is a frustration that us totally blind guys now have to always fight. Because the partials have a tendency to want to take the good jobs and not let us participate. But by the time I was leaving the School for the Blind, I got kicked out because I still hold to this day, I believe, the record for the number of trips to a superintendent's office in 1 year. Not something my parents were proud of, but I was always stretching the envelope. I made some long lifetime friends there, but when I was asked not to come back, the school didn't want me back. And I said, well, it's all right. I'll just go to public school. And they said, well, you'll never make it. Now, David, I made D's and F's at the School for the Blind.
Okay.
I used to tell my mom F was for fantastic. She did not agree. But the only time in my life I've ever begged, I begged the superintendent of the Grinnell Public Schools to let me try public school. Now, this was back before IEPs. This was back before all the support that kids today have. It was my job to get my books early and get them into the Iowa Department for the Blind to get them recorded onto reel-to-reel tape. That's how egg-sucking old I am. But it was my responsibility to get the books and get there. It was my responsibility to figure out how to take the test. And it was a great learning experience because I had to learn to do things for myself. And that was a great thing to learn.
Oh, 100%. And again, it showed that you don't know how you're going to do it, but you had to do it and you got it done. And I'm imagining that helped you once you got into the business world. Now, did you go to college at all or no?
I got out of high school in the spring of 68. That's how old I am. I got married midnight New Year's Eve, 1969.
Huh.
and started college January 5th of 1969. Graduated 3 years later with a double major in business administration and business education, because back in those days, David, we had blind guys that were teachers, and I wanted to be a teacher and a wrestling coach, and then hopefully someday get into business.
Okay.
So I did my undergraduate work at a college called Wartburg College. It's a Lutheran school in north central Iowa.
You get done school, you're out of college, and then did you decide to go for a teaching job? How did the next step work?
Well, first let me back up and tell you how important it is for connecting with people, and we hear it called a lot of things today. But my senior year of college, the Peace Corps representative was on the campus recruiting people for the Peace Corps, and I talked to him for quite a while to see if there was a place in Peace Corps for blind guys, and he ended up telling me, no, Rich, Peace Corps doesn't really have a place for blind guys. And I was not happy with him, but that's the way life rolls. We always, as blind people, always hear the phrase, we'll let you know. Well, too many times they don't let you know, or the
Right.
answer's no for opportunities. Well, I graduated in December of 71. In February of 71, I had the gall to apply for a job that was an assistant director for a 4-county new community action agency.
Huh.
Are you familiar with what community action agencies are?
No, I have an idea, but why don't you explain it?
They were through the OEO department, Economic Opportunities Act, under Nixon. And you might not be familiar with community action agency, but you are familiar with the kinds of programs that we were seed money for. Head Start started through community action agencies. Meals on Wheels started through community action agencies. Senior citizen centers around the country started through that system. And so community action agencies were having grants for assisting low-income, elderly, and minority people help themselves, and that was a cool thing. So I had the nerve to apply for it. So I get to the agency, and you'll never guess who the new director that they had just hired for this new agency was. The Peace Corps representative that I interviewed with, and he was the director, and he was dumb enough to hire me. And it was wonderful. What a wonderful experience for me to have.
Boy, that is something. And so what was some of your tasks there? What did you do there?
Well, as assistant director, I oversaw implements of government grants that we received to run the programs. I would help staff draft up their job descriptions because it was a brand new agency, and we just had to start from scratch. And he gave me tons of opportunities to learn. I learned more in the first 2 years of working for him than I did in going to college. I mean, college teaches you a lot of stuff, but there's so much in life that you have to learn on your own.
How did folks, since you were so high up, how did folks, when they came when you had to either reprimand them or tell them a task to do, how did folks say, oh my gosh, you're blind, how are you going to tell me what to do?
It's a good question, and it's a question that goes a lot deeper than just that, because we find people are always generous with their sympathy to blind people until blind people are starting to do things that they can't do, and then they get a little testy. So I found that there were times that I just had to show that my blindness was not the question, was who I had the authority, and was I man enough to do what I needed to do to get the job done. And I did that for 2.5 years, and the executive director's job for the Community Action Agency in Sioux City, Iowa, was advertising for a new director. And I had the nerve to apply for that, and I hitchhiked from Belle Plaine, Iowa to Sioux City, Iowa to apply for the job as executive director of a Woodbury County Community Action Agency. And I'll be go to the Dickens, they were dumb enough to hire me to be the executive director. And I had the pleasure to become the youngest executive director of community action agencies in the nation at that time. I was only 23, had 60 people working for me, multi-million-dollar annual budget, and of course, as executive director, I did a lot of the public relations and other things that you have to do in grant writing and all that. And it was what a wonderful place to get your feet wet, have the opportunity to learn and do, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful start.
Never mind the blindness, but the fact that when they see a 23-year-old kid come in and that's the director, and I just can imagine when I started in business, I was 21, and I hired a person that I knew from a friend who was a retired person who wanted a part-time job, and he would work 4 or so days a week in the morning. So when people would come in it was a video store, when people would come in to solicit me for advertising or for whatever the case may be, they would immediately go to that guy because they see this guy who's 65 years old, and then they see this kid who's 21 next to him. And he would slide whatever they were putting in front of him and slide it across the counter in front of me. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And so again, never mind the fact that you couldn't see, but you're now this higher up that at 23 is a big deal. At that point, how was your vision? Was it completely gone, or did you still have a little bit of residual vision?
I had some light and dark vision until I was about 25. And I've been totally blind. Can't tell light and dark ever since.
So you're the director now. How long are you in that position? I
did that until December of 75, and I was hitchhiking to work. I hitchhiked to work for over 40 years.
Oh my God.
Because you have to learn to change weaknesses to strengths. Well, being blind, the weakness is you can't drive. Well, back in those days, there weren't nearly as many cars. There weren't cell phones that people were distracted from and it would run over you like a cat. And I would not recommend this to anyone. If my 3 kids or my 3 grandkids hitchhiked, I'd beat them to death with a stick. But it worked for me, David, and I had the opportunity to hitchhike to work for years, and I met a lot of wonderful people. And I was hitchhiking to work. I just finished doing the Jerry Lewis Muscular Dystrophy Telethon local chairmanship in the fall of 75. And I was hitchhiking to work, and this guy picks me up, and he says, "Hi, Rich Crawford, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine, but I don't recognize your voice." He said, "We've never met." And I said, "Well, how do you know me?" And he said, "Well, you're pretty visible in our town. You're always on TV with new programs for the poor, and you're on different boards and stuff. So you're pretty visible. And we were wanted to see if you'd be interested in getting into our business." And I said, "Well, what's your business?" He said, "Well, we're stockbrokers." And by that time, I was downtown Sioux City, and I, being the quiet, shy introvert that I am, I looked him up in the city directory, and he really was a stockbroker. So I called and interviewed with the local manager, and one thing led to another, and I flew to Minneapolis to interview with the executives of, at that time, the company was Dane, Coleman, and Quill. Out of Minneapolis was their home base, and spent a whole day of batteries of interviews. And the last interview of the day was a couple-hour session with an industrial psychiatrist that had a screening process that he thought would tell brokerage companies the odds that you would succeed, kind of like career, whatever they call it, where you find out if your aptitude. That's the word I was working on. It's your aptitude. And they said at the end of the day, "Well, we'll let you know." Well, David, we've heard that so many times over the years. The next day they called and says, "Hey, Rich, we'd like to give you an opportunity to go to work for our company." And I says, "Well, let me think about it." Okay. Gave it about 7 seconds. And I says, "Okay." So I decided in the December of 75 to leave my government job, which is pretty entrenched, and I had great benefits and stuff, and decided to go out on my own and become a stockbroker, a financial advisor. And I was a business major, was one of my majors in college, so I enjoyed business and math and that kind of thing. So I went to work for them in January of 76 and spent 41 years as a financial advisor.
Typically, when you are able to get into the financial sector, there are several tests and things like that that you have to take. Was that in place back then? Were there any kind of, I think it's called the Series 7 test or something like that?
Yeah, there's a whole battery of tests that you have to take. And back in those days, I had to fly to New York, and a member of the New York Stock Exchange read me the exam. And it wasn't until years later that they finally made exams where you could do them locally.
Okay.
But then I would still have to hire a reader to read the exams to me. And they were kind enough to give us double time because of the reading process takes time.
Okay.
But they gave us twice as much time to take the test as normal was the only accommodation. One time I was going to take a test, and the reader that they provided, because I couldn't provide my own reader because I might cheat, right? So
Right.
they provided the reader. Well, this guy was a jock. He was a PE teacher, and he read so slow, and he couldn't pronounce words. He couldn't even pronounce fiduciary. And about 2 hours into the test, I said, I've got to stop. I'm not getting anywhere near the pace that I need. And I said, we'll have to get me a different reader. And I told the company that provided the reader, I said, get me a drama major, an English major, somebody that can read and understands words.
Right.
So that's what we did. The next time it went out just fine.
Let's take a step back. When we had spoken earlier, you had joined the NFB in the late 60s. How did that all come about?
After I got out of high school, I went to the Iowa Department for the Blind and met Dr. Jernigan, who was the executive director of the Iowa Commission for the Blind. And I got to tell you, out of all the blind people that I've ever known, as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Jernigan has done more to help the blind of the world than any other single person that I've had the pleasure of knowing over the years. He was an incredibly strong role model, and he just would bring the best out of you. I mean, he had a way of getting you to reach down into your own soul and dream and think outside the box. He was able to help us raise expectations, and that's one of the biggest problems we still have, is people have low expectations of what they can do. And he was so good at helping us open our minds, dream about things that were untouchable practically, and not be go to the dickens if we didn't accomplish them.
That's something that so many of us try to push everybody in that direction, that you can do this. Again, you might not do it the same way somebody who is sighted does it, but you're going to get it done. I was reading something earlier online today, and it was talking about how people will just come up and grab a hold of you and move you around a store or across the street or whatever.
Grab your cane, try to leave.
Yeah, you're a Mylar balloon, right? And you would never; those people would never do it to somebody who is sighted. So why would you want to do it to us? Because you think we need help. If I need help and I don't know where I am, I'm going to ask somebody. But otherwise, I'm good. And I don't think folks get that. They think that we always need help. You worked with Dr. Jernigan. He taught you. And so at that point, was it the NFB? Were you in a chapter, a division? How did that all work out? What was that like?
I was a member of the Iowa affiliate.
Okay.
I lived in a small town that there wasn't a chapter. Des Moines had chapters, but Belle Plaine, Iowa didn't.
Okay.
And so I was a member of the state organization.
Okay.
I held office in the state organization for a number of years, but it was, like I tell people, you get to know blind guys. You'll see blind guys at our organizational meetings that you really want to be like, and then you meet other blind guys that you don't want to be like. But you know what? That's no different than my sighted friends.
Right.
I've got sighted friends that I really, really strive to emulate them, but there's some of them I don't want to be like them. So,
what positions did you have in the affiliate?
I was first vice president for 10 years.
Okay.
Back in the 80s and 90s. I also served as one of the 3 commissioners that oversaw programs for the blind for the state of Iowa. I did that for a term.
Okay.
And I was president of the local Sioux City chapter for over 10 years and treasurer for a number of years. And I'm now, 6 years ago, we moved from Iowa. I spent my first 70 years in Iowa and then moved to Sioux Falls, South Dakota 6 years ago to assist with after school care for our granddaughter.
Okay.
who was 9 at the time. And I've been involved with the South Dakota affiliate now, and I'm treasurer of the state affiliate.
I am treasurer of a chapter and a division. And I still say, and the president of our chapter always tells me, you are treasurer for life. And it's, I guess, my life that I'm treasurer for. I think it's it's probably the worst job to have because
Absolutely.
you've got it. Secretary, especially today, and thinking back to how things were, again, I'm amazed at how things got accomplished back then because, like you were saying, you hitchhiked. Today I need to go somewhere. I pull out my phone and I get a Lyft or an Uber. Just things like that. When I can't see something and read it, I pull out my phone or, hey, Meta, what does this say? And it reads it to me. Hey, well, where's this in the fridge? I take the camera out in my phone and scan the fridge and then, it'll tell me, or I drop something on the floor and it tells me. So thinking back to those times when you were doing all this stuff, I don't know that I could survive.
Well, I hitchhiked because I wanted the independence to go where and when and where I wanted to. I didn't want to be on a bus schedule. And as a stockbroker, who was going to business when I was going to business to work, David? Other businessmen and women. So I'd get a ride from you. And by the time we went the 2 miles from my house to downtown Sioux City, I knew your name. I knew where you worked. I teasingly say I knew if you was happily married, but that's only a joke. And I would then send you a note saying, hey, David, thanks for the ride the other day. If you ever do any investing, think of me. A month later, I'd call you up and say, Dave, this is Rich Crawford, a stockbroker. Oh, yeah. I said, David, do you ever do any investing? Now, there's only 2 answers to that question. Yes or no. If you'd say no, I'd say, David, are you going to be broke all your life? And that would generally and get a chuckle out of them. And then I'd say, David, if I have a good investment idea, could I share it with you? And there's nobody that says no to that. So in the sales business, we always hear that we have to contact somebody 6 to 7 times before they really want to do business with you. Well, that's no different than being a stockbroker. You had to make a relationship, earn their trust. They had to see that the recommendations that I made went up and made them money because they didn't give a rat's if they lost money if I was blind or not. They wanted to know. And I taught my clients it takes foresight, not eyesight, and there is a difference.
That is true, though. Very true. Do you still invest? You still do that?
I manage
for yourself.
I manage about a third of my money. About 2/3 of it, I still let my partners who bought me out when I retired, they still manage most of it. And I generally beat their performance. The only reason, David, is because I will do risk with my personal money that I would never let you do with your advisor. I wouldn't let you do the same things I do because I will take risk that you have no business taking.
And I guess as you go through life with your clients, similar things. You're not gonna risk somebody. I mean, it could be catastrophic to someone when everything that they've given you is now out the window because XYZ company didn't do what it was supposed to do and is now out of business.
I learned early on, if you screw Grandpa, you don't get a shot at his grandkids.
So you had your own. It was your own firm then. You created at some point in time.
No, I was working for a firm, but I had my own partnership. I was independent with under the umbrella of. I spent 25 years at Dane. I spent 10 years with Smith Barney, and then the last 6 years before I retired, we opened a new office in Sioux City. R.W. Baird out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, had never been in Sioux City. And they wanted to come into that marketplace. And so 7 of us left Smith Barney and opened a Baird office. And so that was where I was the last 6 years. But I was independent under their umbrella.
And it's still set that same way, pretty much, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Industry, okay.
And I've helped over 11 other blind guys get into the business and help mentor them over the years too.
Thinking about how things are today compared to even 10 years ago with the internet and access to the information now, that's obviously a lot easier to get to if you either use a screen reader, whatever the case may be. And everybody always bring up well, that's not really accessible or that's not accessible. But compared to how it was when you started in the business, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot better at the end for getting information and things like that.
In the early years, I had to hire a secretary to read the computer screen to me to give stock quotes and read research. By the time I left with JAWS and those kinds of things, you can access most of it. However, it was getting harder. I left at a time that I thought the technology was not keeping up with the changes visually. When all of a sudden you had to use a mouse to dial the phone, that's pretty tough to do for us blind guys. And in the early years, they handed me a phone book and a city directory and a pat on the back and said, go find money. Today, with all the do not call list and everything else, it's a lot harder today.
So how does that work with so somebody's on the do not call list? Do you get was it a computer, something you logged into and you could pull up numbers and then you would see, oh, this one's a do not call? How did that work?
They provided you phone numbers that were on the do not call list.
Okay.
They didn't give you the names of the people, but you have back in the early days, you could sign up for do not call, except you could never block the politicians.
Funny how that works, right?
Isn't that just how strange that works that way?
You spent many years in the markets. What was your best stock of things you recommended to folks? Give me a couple of good ones that you had back in the day, or even if it was your last year in while working. What were some of your best investment ideas?
Some of the best ones that turned out, and not necessarily because I had the foresight, I just got lucky. And I always wanted to buy things that made sense to me. And I own Apple dirt cheap. I own Google dirt cheap. I own NVIDIA dirt cheap. Those companies just have been a bonanza, but they would be. I took positions that were probably not smart, except in hindsight. In hindsight, we're always 20/20, right? That's
right.
That's what.
Right.
But so I've had some great winners over the years, and I've had some losers, and thank goodness my losers were never huge positions. And that was one of the things that you never wanted to get too much in any one thing, because we generally try to keep a rule of about no more than 5% of the assets that I'm working with will go in any one stock, just because you can't afford to have a Sears Roebuck. You can't afford to have an Eastman Kodak. These companies come and gone. Kmart came and went. If you're betting all your money on these one companies and bad things happen, and the .com boom got a bunch of people, but
right.
Thank goodness I didn't get into much of the .coms like I have into the AI and the computerization of today.
You mentioned Apple, and I've seen Forrest Gump a million times, but we had it on a week or two ago. And at one point, Lieutenant Dan invested him in a fruit company. So when you said you invested in Apple early, it made me think of that, because obviously it was around the time that this was going on within the movie, and just incredible runs that they have. And as you're in business and as you're selling stocks, and what else did you do besides stocks?
I did tax-free bonds, corporate bonds, mutual funds, annuities. An entire array of products.
Basically the whole 9 yards, other than a friend of mine I said, what stocks do you have? Oh, no, I just have CDs. I said, what? I thought, okay.
Guaranteed losers. Between inflation and taxes, you lose money on CDs.
Right,
but
exactly.
You know what? People who don't want to take risk don't deserve reward. What's risk-free? If you want to be risk-free, die.
My mother used to say, don't get old. I'm like, Mom, if I don't get old, that means I'll be dead.
That's it. That's right.
She had all these health issues at the end, but still fought through them. And, again, going back to what you said about your folks, it wasn't until my father died that I knew where I got my independence from. We were going to visit my mom. She was in an assisted living place, and she was around 88 years old. And one of the aides were telling me she had to get dressed to go to some appointment today. And so she started early and she wouldn't take any assistance. It took her 2 hours to get dressed and button the buttons. She had, and I unfortunately have inherited this arthritis, where, obviously buttons are difficult. She took
Sure.
2 hours to get dressed, but she didn't want anybody to help her. And I realized at that point, it wasn't my dad who was, like I said earlier, only went to 8th grade, was a POW after his plane was shot down in World War II and held by the Nazis for 13 months. It wasn't it wasn't him that I, unfortunately, and he has all the business acumen, which I did get some of that from him, but the independence I got from my mom, and I didn't realize that until my dad had died. And I was just amazed at that, how strong she was about that. It just shows you, like you said earlier, what your folks teach you and instill in you really carries you for your life.
I like to share a story that I was senior in high school. I was in a play, and January, 25 degrees below zero in Iowa. Play practice got over, and I was waiting at the front door, and not one of the kids offered to give me a ride home.
Wow.
And I walked home crying, and I walked in the back door, and my dad says, "What's wrong?" I said, "Dad, the kids don't like me in school." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I got done with play practice, and nobody offered to give me a ride home." He said, "Did you ask?" I said, "Don't have to ask, Dad. They know I'm blind. They don't know I drive. Nobody offered to help me out." He said, "Did you ask?" I said, "No." He said, "Don't you ever come home crying to me because your needs aren't met because you didn't ask." What a nice lesson. We have to let people know our needs.
Same thing goes with the learning bit of it as well. When you do something that doesn't work out the first time, you got to figure out the next time the same thing happens, you can't do the same thing because you're going to get the same result.
Same results, that's right.
So you got to do something different.
When I share my story, I like to emphasize that we've got to be willing to try stuff. I was on the first board of directors of the Big Brothers and Big Sisters in Sioux City back in the early 70s. And a few years ago, they came to me and said, "Hey, we're doing a fundraiser. We're trying to get past board members to rope rappel off the tallest building in Sioux City for $1,000 and raise money for Big Brothers and Big Sisters. Will you do it?" And I said, "Sure." Well, David, I got to bunt up this tallest building in Sioux City, and I put my legs over the side of the building, and I could hear the band down below playing and all the people talking, and I thought of that country music song. What was I thinking? And what do you think the hardest part of rope rappelling off the tallest building is? It's thinking about it. How many times in our life is it the thinking that gets us in trouble? We think it to death, and the actual doing, well, that wasn't so hard after all. And when we try something and we succeed, it triggers endorphins in our brain that's just like taking drugs, David.
Right. You're right.
It gives us a high, and our body says, "Well, heck, if I can do that, I can probably do this." And so teaching our blind friends to try, teaching my grandkids to try stuff is vitally important to creating their own success.
It really is. And it's funny that you mentioned that. There is an organization here in Pennsylvania that every year has a fundraiser. They call it the Eye Drop. And they go up on this 10-story building in Lancaster and rappel down the side of it. And they raise money for the organization to do that. So very similar. How tall was that building that you went down?
10 stories. But, we talked about common sense earlier. Just think about this. It has to be safer than anything because they couldn't do it otherwise.
Right.
There cannot be a risk. There's no risk. If there was risk, they wouldn't do it.
Right.
They wouldn't let you do it. They wouldn't let me do it.
There you go.
So
there you go.
Trying is, my dad taught me, as I said earlier, to fix my own stuff. I'm telling you, David, if I have a plumbing problem in my house, I either fix it or I screw it up so bad that the plumber earns his keep. He's not going to get an easy job off of me. And that attitude has just stood me in good stead all these years.
And that is something funny that you mentioned, like mechanics and things like that. My parents, both of them, my mom was probably better than my dad, but barely. And I have never, he said, "Oh, I need to have somebody, you need that bike put together. We'll get so and so to do it for us." He was never one to, it was just, I don't know if it just, he had other more important things to do, to
Yeah,
never
it had
learn
nothing to
how
do
to
with
do
seeing,
that.
did it?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with seeing, yeah, and
Nothing.
again, this
Nothing
is
to
a
do with
guy,
sight.
yeah, this is a guy that sat in the back of an airplane when the Nazis are shooting at him, and, he's stuck back there, that, the wheel would come up, and he's trapped until the landing gear goes down, so, when the plane was on fire, when they were over Germany, he had to say to the guy, "Hey, put the landing gear down so I
So
can get
I'm
out."
down. Well, so I can get out of here.
So, yeah, but to put anything together, "Oh, we'll get so and so to do that," and it's just the way he was, um, and a lot of things today, if you love to do something, I have a web design and marketing company that once we started, when I started it with a partner about 22 years ago, we loved it. We were doing all the web work and doing everything. But as we got bigger, all of a sudden you're not doing the web work, you're paying bills and you're doing ads
The
and
boring stuff.
yeah, you're doing the stuff that you didn't you didn't really sign up for. You just wanted to make websites and do stuff like that or create ads or whatever it is. And that's one thing in business, that once you get something going and it gets to a point, and that's the sad part about, if you love to fish and you start a fishing company, and all of a sudden you're now not fishing anymore because you're paying bills and scheduling workers and so forth. So it's just something that when you're in business, you just got to be able to do it all. And my dad was able to do it all except put stuff together.
I would encourage our people, our blind people, to be involved in the NFB. When out here in South Dakota, I'm finding people that are members of the ACB, and I'd say, look, just be involved. Be willing to give of your time and energy to help the next generation of blind kids, because we've made it pretty easy for them in a lot of ways, and we need to be there as role models. We need to push our blind people to read books, as I said earlier, about successful blind people. Because I'm telling you, I read a book about Eric Weinmeier climbing Mount Everest. 25% of the people that try climbing Mount Everest die. Now, it has nothing to do with my blindness, but that's not on my bucket list.
Right. Right.
But thank goodness it was on his.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's how it encourages folks to go and do, and being out and about with a group of blind folks. When we have our chapter meetings, we usually, after the chapter meeting, we usually go to lunch. And there have been times when I've been going ahead to see, okay, let's see how we have to go over this way or how we have to go over that way. So then I can go back. But I would go up ahead and see, oh, let me see what's up there. And then I'll come back and figure out what we're going to do. And it's just something that's what I like to do. I like to explore and figure out. And like you say, once you do something, whatever the case may be, you find a place, you get from point A to point B. I remember the first time I took a train into Center City, Philadelphia on my own, I felt like I landed on the moon.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened when I first took a train from Philadelphia to New York, and then we took a train from Philadelphia to New York and found the subway, got on the right subway, went up to my daughter's apartment. Same thing. It's just something that once you do it, you're like, oh, now I could do that. Now I'm comfortable. You become comfortable with it, and now you build on that, and you become more independent, and you need less help. And there's always going to be people willing to help you even when you don't need it, but it's something that you have the confidence, and the confidence is the biggest. First you have to have the courage.
And you get that by doing and achieving and building on the confidence. One begets the other.
Right.
We have to encourage our blind friends also to be involved in more than just the blind organizations. We've got to have our blind guys involved in churches and involved in service clubs. And I'm always amazed on how few blind guys belong to a service organization in their community.
Right.
But it's that networking that helps educate. And we're going to have to educate the sighted to let them know we can walk and talk and pee and everything else just with the best of them. But we've got to do it every day. for the rest of our life. It's never going to be over because the sighted people have it wrong.
Exactly. And that is something that, again, like you say, every time we are out in public, that's, oh, look at all those blind people together. I wonder what they're doing. Do they need help? Do they need this? Do they need that? With the NFB, did you ever go to the national conventions? Did you go to
I've been to a number of national conventions over the years, yes.
Starting out, how was that when you walked into your first convention? We're coming up. Convention is about a month away. This year it's in Austin. And how was that when you first, were you amazed when you saw those blind folks in the hotel together?
It was just overwhelming to see that many blind guys trucking around in a hotel, and they figured out how to find the restaurants, the bars, the meeting rooms, the exhibit halls, and we just find a way. And if you can't find a way, somebody will drag you to it. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Switching to state conventions, do you still go to those, or do you don't go to those anymore?
Sure. We just finished having our state convention the end of April in South Dakota. And Ben Dolan, who is the president of the Wisconsin affiliate, came over as the national rep.
Okay.
But we had about 42 people at our state convention, and we're hoping to get that to grow for, South Dakota only has a little over 700,000 people in the whole state. So we're a small state. But the ability for us to read about successful blind people, be involved in the community, in addition to the blind organizations that you need to participate in, it just is a price you've got to be willing to pay. Earlier, we mentioned about Braille. And when we know that Braille readers earned up to 30% more income, what do you think that is? My suggestion is if you're willing to pay the price to learn Braille, that tells you a lot about your nature and your internal determination to make yourself successful. It has nothing to do with reading Braille. It has to do with the kind of person you are. Reading Braille is the byproduct of your commitment to your own success.
And it is so important. And I have to admit, I do not know how to learn or read Braille. Again, I have some hand issues, but it's disappointing to me. And I know that, for example, at the Jernigan Institute, they have this Braille wall where it's you use racquetballs to fill in the cells. And if everything could be that big, where I could use the palm of my hand to feel what's where. But I couldn't imagine. I mean, I don't know if they have quote unquote large print Braille like that. And I know they do have something that's a little bit bigger than the standard Braille.
Called jumbo Braille.
Yeah, it still doesn't work for me. But the racquetballs work for the limited amount of Braille that I do know. But I
would say to you, doing that would be the same thing as the blind guy that doesn't want to admit he's blind, so he's trying to read large print, and he's got 3 letters on the huge screen. You can't read fast enough to be competitive in life, David.
Exactly.
You can't read long enough that your head doesn't fall off with a headache because you're straining your eyes reading at 4 words a minute.
When I first started to learn JAWS, and they said, we're going to shut the monitors off, I came home and I said to my wife, I've just been on the computer for 6 hours and I feel like I am so well rested because I wasn't straining to look at a screen and trying to zoom in and it's just easier. It's just a lot better to get information and it makes it much easier.
If we can come up with the method to teach people who are going blind that it's respectable to be blind and we shouldn't spend our life being afraid to carry a cane or use a dog, we will make a huge progress in our blind movement because we have a tendency to think it's embarrassing to be blind. We don't want anybody to know we're blind. I have found that to be just the opposite, David. I have found that with my cane, when I'm out doing something with a project with a service club, I am commanding respect from people that think, dang, he's doing that. He's not sitting at home waiting for the check.
Right.
He's out here doing stuff. And it commands respect, not embarrassment. We have thinking here.
It's something that, and I was in that boat. And when I was learning, and I've only been a cane user probably for about 20 or 25 years. But when I was being taught O&M, the person who was teaching me told me the story of this person who got the O&M instruction and at some point got hit by a car. And I don't know if he was killed. I don't remember. It was 25 years ago or so.
Yeah.
His cane was in his bag. He wasn't using the cane to get around. And again, I don't know if he was killed or just injured, but it's something that even to the point where before COVID, my wife and I had downsized our house into an apartment. And I would leave the building. I would leave my apartment to take the trash out or something, and I would do it without my cane. And then one day I ran into somebody, and
You must be drunk.
and and I thought, and they say, "How did you not see me?" I said, "Well, it's it's a long story, and I can't see." So then, and I'm not young, but I'm on the younger end of old. So there were a lot of old folks in that building that, and fortunately, this lady was walking with her son, who was probably in his 20s. So the son was able to stop her from falling, and neither of us fell to the ground. But I just didn't see her. I saw the guy, but I didn't see his mother, who was again older, and I felt bad. So it's something that, if you want to do something, do it the way that works, and do it the way that's that's not going to jeopardize your safety or somebody else's safety. And that's when I was never concerned about my safety, but then I thought, wow, I could really hurt somebody because I don't move slowly, and that could be an issue when you can't see.
I tell people my white cane is an excuse for my behavior.
So as we wrap up, is there anything, and you had a lot of great things to say. I mean, the young folks, to get younger folks involved and show them to get out and about into whether they do their own business or they go to work for somebody. I always say, if I could do it, so can you. It's just something that we've got to make sure the folks who are younger, because obviously as we get older, we're not going to be here forever. I'm not going to be treasurer of the Keystone chapter forever. It's just until I stop breathing, I'm going to be treasurer, evidently. And we've got to bring in new folks to be able to take over for us once our time is done.
Every service organization in the country is starving for younger people because this next generation is not a giving of their time. Like, I'm 76 years old, and we're a giving age group of people because we've lived in the sweet spot of our country. We've had opportunities, but we make our opportunities so many times. And we just have to be willing to be involved and prove not only to yourself, but to the people around us every day for the rest of our lives that we as blind people can do incredible things, and our limitations are in our minds, not our eyesight. As Jim Stovall read, when I read his book, You Don't Have to Be Blind to See, he said something that was profound to me. He says, losing your sight isn't nearly as bad as losing your hope. Well, I thank you for letting me share today. I want to tell you that I am a free resource to people. I don't give financial advice anymore because I'm not licensed. I've been able to do so many, many things, from snow skiing and water skiing. I've shot 3 deer in my adult life as a blind guy. I've shot pheasants, and there's always a way. And if people want to reach out to me, they can do it by calling me at 712-898-4869. I do not text, but I do email at Rich Crawford. That's CRAWFORD. I tell them it's like Cindy, but Cindy's not my wife. 1950 at outlook.com. Rich Crawford, 1950 at outlook.com. Young people, if you're listening to this and you want to talk to an old blind guy most people consider my life to have been incredibly successful. I've been blessed with good health. I've been blessed with making good money. And I've been blessed by being able to give a lot of my time and my money and my energy to hopefully helping other blind people. And I'm a free resource if anybody wants to contact me.
Rich, I really appreciate you joining me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me share.
Thanks again to Rich for stopping by and giving us all that great information and encouragement. It is so important that you build your confidence, you get out there, like Rich said, let folks see us out and about in public doing things that sighted people do, and it will help all blind people when the sighted folks see us. Again, thanks to Rich for coming by. Now, before we go, I did want to point out you can register virtually for the 2026 National Federation of the Blind National Convention. The information is over at nfb.org/convention. Go there and register. It's $10. When you do register, you have access to the app for the convention. And of course, you're also eligible to win door prizes. So make sure you stick around and listen to general sessions and all the other things that are going to happen from Austin, July 3rd through July 8th. Now, we would love to hear from you here at White Canes Connect. If you've got questions, comments, show ideas, are you going to National Convention? Let us know. Reach out. You can email us at whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. That's whitecanesconnect@gmail.com. Or better yet, give us a call, 267-338-4495. You've got up to 3 minutes. Leave your name and town if you do leave a voicemail. And again, whatever you want to let us know. But you only have 3 minutes. Again, 267-338-4495. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. Thanks for listening. Take care.